Hello again, this is Jasmina, and in this video I'm going to talk about how you activate 6 special formations, and 4 of them are really good formations and the other 2 are still quite good and worth activating. Now this information here really only is in regards to the Flying Star chart for your residence. And the Flying Star chart governs the opportunities that you see and that are afforded to you from the outside, from basically the universe. And they work through humans, of course, but it comes through the universe. Now, you also have 2 other charts that are important in any kind of residence. One is the purple-white, which influences the emotional state of the people living there. Of course, if you have a good chart here, this tends to automatically be good because things are good. And you also have the Chi-Man chart, and that influences what is usually referred to as the spiritual side. Now, that can include things like how motivated you are to improve your life, how fulfilled you feel in your current life. So if you have one of these 2 issues, you might want to focus on finding a place that has a better chart of whichever one you've got the issue with. But you still want to make sure you've got a good Flying Star chart. Now, there is always a consideration about Shachi. You want to block it if you have it and can block it. Now, there are things called hidden and inverse sirens, and they are affected only if there's Shachi. So if you don't have any Shachi or you can block the Shachi, you don't have to worry about the sirens. But this could be important. Not necessarily important, and many practitioners don't use this. I don't have enough experience to know whether or not this really affects things, because not all houses have sirens. But many houses do have Shachi, and it depends where it is, how bad it is. Now, your Qua number will also influence which house is best for you. Now, many families have a mix of West and East group people, and when I deal with that, what you want to do is give everybody at least 2 good things. And you have the house facing, the door facing, and the bed facing. Those are 3 things that every house will have, and you can arrange this so that a person gets 2 of those most of the time. The last one is a desk facing. Now that really only applies to children who are in school, or adults who are in school, or adults who work from home. And so you can always get 2 if you include the desk. Now, special formations of the flying stars, when activated, actually help the occupants see and exploit outside opportunities, and more outside opportunities will come your way. And this is why a lot of people really focus on the Flying Star chart. Now, this does apply more strongly to houses than apartments or condos, because although the apartment building as a whole has a Flying Star chart, it is divided equally to the number of apartments that you have. So it is weakened in respect to a house. Now, any special formation has to be activated if you want to feel its good effects. If you don't have it activated, you don't have any special boost or any extra energy, and you have to look at every single sector of your house and look at the stars that are in there and analyze those stars to tell you whether or not it's a good or bad area of your house. But if you have, especially one of the 4 best special formations activated, everything is good. And this is why so many people want one of these houses. Now, some of the special formations can be permanent, and others can be annual, and some can be both. Now, if the formation is annual, it's a great year to start something big. Now, I have another video that tells you where all your annual good years are. And you can find that link at the end of this video. And this will give you a heads up of when you're going to have a good year. So before that year comes, you should start thinking about ideas for big projects that maybe you've always wanted to do. And this time you actually start giving at least a rough outline. And it can be more than one project. It depends on, how much you're interested in doing. But during that special year, which will start on February 4th almost all the time, because it's with the Chinese solar year, you want to quickly flesh out the ideas, make the outline a bit more firm and make a real plan. And you want to do this maybe in the first 2 months. And then the rest of the year, you start working towards that goal to make that big project happen. If you have more than one idea, and many people do, then in the first 2 weeks or so of that good annual formation, you should decide which project to pursue. And the reason why you want to wait till then is because the universe will be pointing you to the right project that you have the best chance of succeeding in. So it will know what your skills are. And maybe you have a project that is just beyond your skill level at present, and so it will guide you to the other one that you do have the skill level for, or at least closest to it. Now you only need to start the project that year. It can continue beyond a year, but that year gives you a permanent boost. And that's why you want to know what your annual formations are. Now the criteria for activating an annual formation is the same as activating a permanent formation. The annual formations are stronger with activation, but they have at least a little effect without activation. But activate it if you can, because it's worth it. Now, many special formations, but not all, require the presence of mountains and water. And remember, in Feng Shui, mountains include hills and higher ground. Mountains must come from nature. Natural water, like a lake or a pond, not a river or the ocean, that is better. But man-made water is okay as long as it's quiet, slowly moving, and kept clean. If you have a river, you want to look at the San He Feng Shui rather than the San Yuan Feng Shui, which this is San Yuan. The size of the water feature will depend on the size of your house. So for a 1,000 square foot house, it requires roughly, this is about 12 square feet, and it's about 2 feet deep. It can be deeper, it can be bigger, it's okay. But if you have a house twice that size, you need at least twice the area and maybe a little deeper too. Now, it's up to you. You can check the hidden and inverse sirens if you're concerned about them. Not all practitioners are. And like I said, I haven't had enough experience to know if this is really serious. Again, if you have no shachi, you have no problems with sirens. So block any shachi that you do have, and then you're fine. You don't even have to worry about this. Now, there are permanent forms of Kambu 10, Pearl String, Parent String, and the 7-Star Robbery, and these 4 make all stars become timely for all periods. And this, when activated, any one of these forms will make this house, whether it's a house, apartment, condo, whatever, it'll be compliant for all periods. So this is one reason why you want a house like this, because you can stop worrying about time. Now, there are also annual combo 10s, pearl strings, and parent strings, but not for really the 7-Star Robbery. They will make all stars become timely for that single year. And each one of these types of special formations will repeat every 9 years. The on-mountain, on-water formation creates a facing sector that's good for finance and wealth and money and all that, and a sitting sector that's good for health and relationships. Whereas the up-mountain, down-water formation has a sitting sector that's good for finance and a facing sector that's good for health and relationships. So they're just flip of each other, and their stars are flipped too. Now, in general, natural water is a lot better than man-made water, unless that natural water is somehow polluted or smells bad or is murky and, there's fish can't live in it, that kind of thing. Then you're better off with a piece of man-made water that you can keep clean. Now, rivers do not count as water for activation. Lakes and ponds do. Oceans do not also, because they tend to have too much movement. And it's the movement of the river that's the problem. But if you have nearby rivers, look at your Sanhe Feng Shui. That would tell you what the river's effect on your house is. And that's a separate thing. And most of the time it's good, but sometimes it's not so good, and you just block the river from view and you're fine. Now, man-made water needs to be larger for larger houses. A rough idea is that you want about 1% of the square foot of the house. And so if you've got 2 stories, you have to include all the square footage. And you want it to be at least 2 feet deep. And it could be more. And of course, if it's a swimming pool, it'll be a lot more. That usually takes care of most houses. If you have a swimming pool, that's big enough to swim in. Now, placing man-made water in a direct spirit location can cause problems. And that's especially true if you're doing this just because you want something decorative there. Now, this actually comes from my direct and indirect spirit video. But here we are in Shuan Kong's period 6 through 9, which is the lower cycle. And the upper cycle is 1 through 4, so this is the one without a period 5. And each of these 2 periods, the lower and upper, are 90 years long. And the places where water, man-made water, is totally safe to place is in these 4 sectors: the southeast, the east, the north, and the southwest. And actually, we are in period 9 in the Shuan Kong already, and water in the north is good for money. Now, this water doesn't have to be as big as the water that you place for activation. This can be a lot smaller. Now, if you place water to activate a special formation, it doesn't matter where you place it, because the activation of the special formation will eliminate the problems either immediately or in a very short time. But you do have to have a mountain. If you need a mountain, you do have to have a mountain where it needs to be. Water can half activate a formation, which is better than no activation at all. But it's really only safe if it can be in this indirect spirit location. But if you have a mountain in the right place, it's okay. You can place water in a direct spirit location if that is what is needed to activate your particular special formation. Now, once period 1 comes, the location of direct and indirect spirit flip completely. But if you've had man-made water put in an indirect spirit location, which is where it should be, it will still be okay once we reach period 1, as long as it's been there at least 5 years. 10 years is a bit better. I should say may be okay. It depends on why you've placed water there. Now, if you've placed water in a direct spirit location to activate a formation in period 9, once period 1 comes, it's in an indirect spirit location, and it's totally fine. So you don't have to worry about that. But if you've placed water so that it activates a special formation, and once period 9 comes, it's now in a direct spirit location, which is not good, but since it's been there for a while, it's okay, because you're activating the special formation and you're continuing to activate it. But it would be untrue if you've placed water there for wealth. Now, in period 9, north is a good place for water for wealth. But once we reach period 1, you want to move that water, because it's not going to do you any good, and it'll be in the wrong place. I think the south is the location in period 1 for wealth, but I do have a video and you can check it. It's still 20 years away. I'm not too worried about it. Now, when placing water, one should be careful not to activate the castle gate if you have a special formation, because you can destroy that special formation. But sometimes if you can't activate the special formation, a castle gate can be good. So you have to look at this in detail. And you only activate a castle gate if water has to be placed in an adjacent sector to the facing direction of the house. So, or the facing sector of the house. So this is only a few small areas you have to worry about. And I do have a video about this. Now, when you obtain your Flying Star chart, which even if you know you have a special formation, it's a good idea to have, you should use a calculator rather than a chart you might see at a place that sells Feng Shui cures, because I have found errors in them. Because I checked to see, because I did all my Flying Star charts by hand 20 some years ago, and I did have a few errors, and so did these websites. But once you understand how the Flying Stars works, it's really clear where the errors are. So, but the calculators, the ones where you put in the data and it gives it to you, I've never seen one that had it wrong. So if the store has a calculator, it should be okay too. Now you can just search for free Flying Star calculator if you want. These three I've checked. They don't require you to register or anything. You don't need to leave your email, and they give you the right charts. So you could use any of these. Now remember, condos and apartments only receive a portion of this energy. So this is most important for freestanding houses, that is activating the special formation. The purple, white, and the Chi-Men charts are more important in the apartments and condos. Just want you to keep that in mind. Now we come to the real activation. Combo 10 houses, there are two types. There's one with a base facing, which is good for money and finance, and base sitting, which is good for health and relationships. And the way to see that is all sectors with the base star and facing or the base and sitting, they will add to 10. And here's an example. Now I indicate the facing direction by the arrow. And here you can maybe see a little easier. This is 10, this is 10, this is 10, and so forth. Now, cut a little bit to the chase. To activate this formation, you cannot have a missing sector. If you have a missing sector, let's say it's the southwest, then you don't have a combo 10. And then this 5-5 becomes a very, very bad sector. So you don't want an important room here. A bedroom, a kitchen, a home office, and you don't want anything important here. A bathroom, a storeroom, that's okay. But if you can't activate the combo 10, the south is terrible. The east is not great for health and relationships, especially for health, so you don't want your kitchen here. This is not good for much of anything. You don't want a home office here. You don't want your kitchen here. A bedroom wouldn't even be very good here either. And this is the same combo, which this isn't great, but we're assuming that's missing. So if it's missing, it doesn't affect anything. Now a combo 10 is one that can be permanent or annual. And some lucky houses have a permanent base facing combo 10, and every 9 years they'll have a base sitting, or vice versa. This could be base sitting, and this could be base facing. Those are really good houses. And because they're the easiest to activate, it's something that I would say go for if you have the opportunity. Now, again, to activate, you must not have any missing sectors. So you can have up to 1/3, but no more than 1/3 of a sector missing, and you're still okay. You could have 1/3 of that sector protruding, and it's still okay. Now, good external landforms do strengthen this formation, but they're not necessary. So you still get a very good house, even if you don't have good external landforms. So this is basically what I mean by having a house with no missing sectors. It's a rather boring rectangular house. It could be square, but the way you divide it in each of the directions, you divide it by 3, and then each one of these is a sector. And then you look at that sector separately. You divide that sector into 3. Now you can divide it vertically or horizontally. It doesn't matter. I've done it horizontally. You can have up to 1/3 missing, and you're still okay. This is a weakened sector, and it's actually quite weakened. If this were maybe halfway between this line and this line, you would have less of a weakening. It would be a little better, but it's still weakened. You could have 1/3 protruding, but it has to be no more than that one sector. Now, if this were farther over or farther up, then you rearrange the lines of your house, and then these 2 sectors would become weak sectors. So that's why you don't want to do that. Or actually, I'm sorry, it would become missing sectors because too much of it would be gone. Here, since this is only 1/3 of it, it doesn't change the outside outline of the house. It's the same as this. So these lines are all the same. So the thing is you can have more than one of these. If you want to have a more interesting house, you can have a little bump out here, maybe a little bit of an indent here, maybe a bay window here, or even you could even come back and have a thing that looks like this. As long as you're not doing more than 1/3, you're okay. So this is something that you can still have an interesting looking house and still have a combo 10 house. Now we come to the pearl string. You recognize a pearl string because in all sectors you have a string of 3 consecutive numbers, and that pattern remains the same in all sectors. Now missing sectors will weaken this formation but do not destroy it. So here's an example of a pearl string house. You always have one that's 1, 2, 3 because you have to have all the combinations. And in this case, it's sitting base facing. Here we have 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 6, and so forth. And we'd be here, 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 and the last one will be 9, 1, 2. Now this is the low shoe pattern. And this is the way it's going to be if you have a pearl string house. They will be in whatever number is here will be this number here. So the base star here will become the sitting star here if we have this formation. Now, it can be different. You don't have to have it this way. You could have it this way. You can have it all different ways. Any one of these ways, which is all 6 possibilities, you can have any one of them. And it will be repeated in all the sectors. Now, to activate, generally, it's my understanding from the masters that you need water in the facing sector and a mountain, hill, or higher ground in the sitting sector. And that will activate this formation. Now, interestingly, every house that has a permanent pearl string formation also has a permanent up mountain down water formation. And for the up mountain down water, you need a mountain in front and water in the back. And you can actually activate both of these if you have a mountain on each side of your house. Now the mountain in front, you don't want it to be super close to your house. You want to have some distance. And how much distance actually depends on how high the mountain is. But you don't want it feeling like it's looming over you, like it's just too close. And if you're fine with it, it's usually fine. Now, the annual forms of the pearl string formation, and they do exist, they do not always have an up mountain, down water formation. So this is only true of the permanent ones. So here you would have to have water in the front and mountain in the back for the annual ones to be fully activated. Now, a parent string formation means that all sectors will have one of these sets of numbers, and they'll be in all these different orders that they can be in. And there's no mixing. So it'll always be 1, 4, and 7, and the other one, there'll be another group that has 2, 5, and 8, and another group that has 3, 6, and 9. And so here's an example. Here is the 1, 4, 7. Here's the 2, 5, and 8, and here's the 3, 6, and 9. And again, if the house has a permanent parent string formation, it also has a permanent up mountain down water formation. Again, it's not true of the annual form, but this has more requirements for the mountains for the parent string, and this is also considered to be slightly more powerful than the pearl string, and that's probably because it's harder to activate. The way you activate it is you need to have mountains in specific locations based on the stars, the 3 stars that are in the facing sector, and the location of those stars in the Loshu chart. So if you have a facing sector of 1, 4, and 7, it'll be in the north where 1 is, the southeast where 4 is, and the west where 7 is. For the 2, 5, and 8, it's the southeast and the southwest and the northeast. 5 is always considered to be a mountain because your house is attached to the earth, and so it has a mountain there automatically. Of course, if you have a houseboat, this doesn't work, or you live in an RV, this doesn't work either. But you don't really have a chart because these things move around. Now, for the 369, it'll be the east, the northeast, the east, the northwest, and the south, and that's just where they're located. So if we go back to our chart, we have northeast. This is the combination of numbers, so we need to have one in the north, south, east, and west. So a mountain has to be here, and these are all 45 degrees. Anywhere, it doesn't have to be in a subdirection 1. It can be anywhere in the north, anywhere in the southeast, or anywhere in the west. And that's a 45 degree for each one of these. Now, mountains in other locations are much weaker, but they have no negative effects. They do tend to activate the sitting star wherever those mountains are. And remember, if you have an activated parent string, all stars become timely for all periods, so you'll feel the good effect. Missing sectors do weaken, but don't destroy it unless the missing sector is a facing sector, and then it's not so terribly clear what set of numbers we look at, so we know where you have to have the mountains. I mean, it gets a little iffy. I haven't heard this addressed, and my intuition says this is a problem. The last one of the ones that activate or make all stars become timely for all periods is the 7-star robbery. You will recognize this because you'll have a double star. That is, the sitting and facing stars will be identical to each other, and it'll either be in the facing or sitting sector of the house. Now, 7-star robbery formations, because of the timing, can really only be permanent. And activation, unfortunately, can only occur when the double star is already timely. And that double star will be the period star of the house. So this can tell you whether or not, pretty quickly, if your house could be activated. Again, there's this chart that tells you what's timely. Let's look at a period 7 house, which will have the double star of 7. Well, you can't activate it now because we're already in period 8. Period 5 won't come around for another 100 years, maybe 80 years. You're not terribly likely to be around. And so this is something you can't activate, and that's just life. Now, you can change the period of your house to the current period, and then your house might have the possibility, especially if you do this in period 9, actually all houses in period 9 have at least the possibility of having a 7-star robbery house. But some of them are hard to activate. But what all this means, except for period 8 houses, you have to activate the formation in the period of time in which the house was built. Otherwise, you have to wait a very long time. The only exception, again, is period 8, where you only have to wait to period 1. So the only period that 8 cannot be activated is in period 9. But not all period 8 houses have the possibility of having a 7-star robbery. But all period 9 houses do. Now, there are unfortunately 3 additional physical criteria of the house that make it even harder. First off, your main door must be located in the sector where the double stars are located. And this can be in the sitting sector of your house. So that feels a bit backwards. There also must be exterior doors in 3 specific locations, and one of them will be the main door where the double stars are. And depending on where your double stars are, the other 2 doors have to be in the other 2 locations. And the same is true for the northwest and southeast. That's another group. And then the southwest and the northeast have to have both of those doors and one in the center. So this effectively, unless your house is very big, tends to create a missing sector in the center of your house, in part of your house. Now that's okay for a 7-star robbery house. Now, one caveat is you should be careful that these doors don't end up in line with each other, and that's especially true for these 2 since they're diametrically opposed. So that is one thing you have to be careful about, because otherwise the energy just goes through the house. Now, another important thing is door direction is not a consideration. I don't care what direction your door is. It's the door sector that's important. Now, you also must have an unobstructed path between the 3 exterior doors and the center of your house. It doesn't have to be unobstructed from the floor to the ceiling. It can be a door opening, but you cannot have a door there that can close, because if somebody closes the door and it's not the period of when the house was built, you're going to destroy your 7-star robbery, and then you have to wait until a long time, unless it's a period 8 house. You have to wait a very long time before you can activate it again. So if you happen to have the right setup and you have a door that would meet this requirement, take the door off the hinges, remove the door, put it someplace else, make that just a door opening. There also is some other things that are needed. You want to have a Her2 or a combo 10 between the facing star of the sector with the double stars and the facing star in the center. You also want to have one between the sitting star in the center and the sitting star in the sector opposite the double stars. And I'll show you a diagram and it'll make a little more sense. Now, Her2 links in general are stronger than combo 10s, but if you only have combo 10s, still be happy, because this is still a very good house, because this is a very strong formation. Now, there is an alternate way of looking at it, and it comes from the poem. Now, way back when they first taught Feng Shui, you had to learn a lot of poems. And once you memorize the poems, then your teacher would explain how to use them. And in the poem about the 7-star robbery, it says, literally, once you translate it to English, south must combined. And so you can alternately, in my opinion, use the north-south axis, because it's the south that must combine, not necessarily. I mean, this seems to be the interpretation, but I don't see why this doesn't still hold. As long as the south combines, you're okay. And it's the same kind of combination you have here. The last thing you need is a mountain and exterior water located in the sector where the double stars are. That will finally finish activating this whole form. So that was quite a few slides to get to this point. So here's an example of a north-facing house where your 2 stars, the double stars, are in the south. So this is what I call a sitting form of the 7-star robbery. And your main door must be located here. Now, this may seem a little strange to be able to have this setup, but here we have a HER2 and here we have a HER2. So this is like a full-blown 100% strong as it can be. But you have to have a somewhat unusual situation. If you have a road here and a lake here, and you have a lot of windows here, and this is obviously the prettiest view, and the house looks really good from this view, that is looking back at the house, this will become your facing direction, even though it's not where the road is. But when someone delivers, they will deliver to this door in your sitting sector, and that works. Now, that's not all you need. You still need the mountain and water here. Now, if you have a lake here, you probably have higher ground here at least, and maybe a mountain or a hill, and that's good. You may well have to add a small pond to do the exterior water, but once you do that, this is fully activated, and this is as strong as you possibly could get. Now, here's an example of a real house, and I'm here showing you how the energy gets from the 3 doors into the center of the house. But this is one where this is a facing period 9 east 2 facing house. It's not built yet. It's not even finished designing yet. But it will have double 9s here, and that's in the facing sector. And so we must have our main door here. And then this either is just a covered porch with no walls, or it can be a screened-in porch, but it cannot have glass. It has to allow air to always come in. And so that means that the chi also comes in with the air. And so we have this door allows it to come in, and it's in the south, and it goes to here. And it has to come to this door because this is the living area, and this is the, if you say it's here, well, you've got a door here and you block it. So it has to be this door that gets the chi, not this door. And this is a garage, if you're wondering what that is. And then we have another door down here, and you can notice I have some 45-degree angles. That helps force the chi into the center of the house. And 45-degree angles are better in general. If you had a 90-degree angle, you have some internal sha chi. So 45-degree angles are better. Now, the other thing is I don't have the center numbers in here, but we have a combo 10 and a HER2 in the north-south direction. We do not have those kind of combos in the east-west direction. So I still consider this at least half, well, maybe 3/4 activated, because I do have a HER2. And it's the HER2 with the sitting and a combo 10 with the facing. And so this is still a pretty good house. Given that this is the only thing that's like really permissible on that piece of land, it's good. And sometimes you have to deal with this. Now we have a mountain here in the front, and all we have to do is place a pond in the right location, and then we will have fully activated this as far as it can go, which is about 75% of 100%. Now, mountains in other locations in the 7-star robbery house doesn't affect things. It gives a little boost to the sitting star in that location. And if the 7-star robbery is activated, it brings out the good side of that sitting star. Missing sectors do not destroy the formation unless the missing sector is one of those 3 important sectors. So you have to be a little careful with this. Now, some practitioners, and I do have to say this because some are very picky, some only say that only a south-facing house could possibly work. I don't believe that. And also it has to be the 369. That is, one of those have to be the double star. But that's like a super strict interpretation. The way a 7-star robbery works is you're taking energy from 3 different cycles. And this is why I started calling it the 3-cycle system, so that I could remember what it was. But 3 is upper, 6 is middle, and 9 is lower in the flying stars. 2 is upper, 5 middle, 8 lower, upper, middle, lower. So you're getting energy from all three cycles into the house and into the center of the house. So that's why this works. And so I don't have these restrictions that some practitioners do. I think everyone is equally good. Now, I think there's a lot of, let's say, worry about this one, the 2, 5, and 8, because if you have a double 2 or a double 5 and somehow the form is inactivated, then this becomes a really bad house, because this will be where your main door will be. If it's a double 5 or a double 2, that's where your main door is. And it's same thing for 8, but 8 isn't so bad. So this, I can see why this worries a lot of practitioners. You just have to be really careful not to deactivate the formation, and you should be fine. And some consider this a bit weakened. I don't. I think it's equally good. Now, there is a diagonal form of this that goes from the southwest to the northeast, and one of these two houses have that possibility. Now, not all practitioners consider this a legitimate form, but there are masters who do, so I also do. Now we got the, let's say, the less powerful ones. This is on mountain, on water. What you have is the facing star in the facing sector is the house's period star, and the sitting star in the sitting sector is also the house's period star. So here's an example. We have a north-facing house. The facing star is 5. This is period 5 house, and the sitting star is 5. Now, if you see a chart, whatever the base star in the center box, that's the period of the house. If you're wondering how these are created, this is where it all starts, and then the rules get more complicated. And it flies, the period of the house always flies in the forward low shoe pattern. So that's the very base. And then there's a lot of rules of how you fly the rest of the stars. Now you activate this by having water in the facing sector and mountains in the sitting sector. The up mountain, down water formation is basically opposite. The sitting star in the facing sector is the period star, and the facing star in the sitting sector is also the period star. So here's another example. This is a west-facing house, and it's a period 3. You can see the 3 here. In the sitting sector, we have in the facing sector, we have the sitting star, and in the sitting sector, we have the facing star. And this is activated opposite. You have to have water in the sitting sector and a mountain in the facing sector. Now again, this mountain, you don't want it to be too close. You want to have some space between you and the mountain. So that's basically it. And if you click roughly here, there should be a video that will come up that you can click on, and this will give you the charts for all houses that have a definitive facing direction for all periods. I'd like to thank you again for watching.